do I have borderline personality disorder? Am I autistic, or is it both? I actually think a lot of people could probably relate to this. I know it can be comorbid, but it's also often that either one gets misdiagnosed as the other. I know, especially in women, autistic women get diagnosed with BPD, misdiagnosed, should I say. So I got diagnosed with BPD in 2018. I kind of sought out that diagnosis just because for a while, like, doctors and stuff were just saying, oh, it's depression, it's anxiety, but even though that was sort of being worked on, other stuff wasn't being looked at. So nothing was really changing. I was in a chaotic home environment growing up. And since moving out, I've been living alone for about a year now. I've noticed those symptoms really, really kind of dwindle, really. Just, I think part of that was, I had a breakdown in 2020 as well. And I just got to a point I was like, I'm fed up of, being around toxic situations. I'm fed up kind of being scapegoated by people. I still had my part in things. I'm not absolving any responsibility of myself. But just recognizing, I had this passion of going for, in friendships and relationships, I had a pattern for going for unavailable people or people that just weren't good for me. Emotionally abusive people that could take advantage, people that would, I guess going back to the emotional abuse, they would kind of like mock anything they could get their hands on about me. But yeah, so since living alone and being away from those sorts of people, I feel so much better in myself. But, obviously I'm not saying, just moving out cures everything. I definitely don't think it's that. I just think working on myself as well kind of went at the same time, and kind of recognising, toxic dynamics and things like that. And, but yeah, so going to the autism, I think, on and off, I thought I had it. For the longest time, and looking back at school, I had like help from teachers from at a young, and I think until secondary school, which kind of looking back felt like I needed more help there than anything else. But yeah, I actually read my old school reports a few months ago, and I think it was like I was in like year 4, year 5, so I would have been about 8 years old, and it said, I think this is just off the times, it's still not right, but it said that I was working below national average, and I'm like, what is that, like I wasn't meeting certain expectations. And one thing that kind of didn't make sense in those reports, like as far as I can remember anyway, it said that like I didn't do well with others, which I know that is very much, looking back, I think it's very much an autistic thing. But I think for me, because I know that autistic people are more likely to be bullied, and that was very much my experience. I was bullied a lot, and I think when in group situations, as far as I can remember at school, like I'd constantly be undermined, or people would think I didn't know anything, or again, they'd make sly digs, and I think that would build up and then I'd snap. But then, the kids wouldn't take accountability for that. So like, oh, Brian's just kicking off. And the teachers were like, oh, sure, whatever. And so they were kind of missing a key part of that experience. Because I think I'd always wanted to, make friends with people, and I think, not being good with social cues and things, and just kids being assholes. Hopefully that doesn't censor YouTube by whispering it. But I remember, I think, again, especially in secondary school, where, usually teachers would be like, okay, they'd pick like 4 people to like the leaders of 4 groups, and then they'd pick other people. I was either picked last, or people would literally be like, oh, like, I think there was once where like, oh, actually, we've got a good idea for a group of 4 instead of 5, so can we not have Brian? It's nothing nasty. Just as a kind of sly way to say that they didn't want me in the group. And because that kept happening, that was very... And, people would bully me for the way I walked, way I talked, whatever. I was very much into my Pokemon and things, and I was bullied for that a lot. I'm kind of going off on a tangent. But yeah, so I think looking into autism, I think it makes more sense now, especially in terms of sensory stuff and not doing well with change, eye contact. I think I very much learnt to mask very well. Because that was the other thing with moving out. I think because my home environment was chaotic and it didn't feel safe, I couldn't really do my stimming stuff, because I noticed that the very rare occasion I would be home alone, I'd kind of be jumping around everywhere, or I'd kind of be like singing, and also I would kind of just like phrase TV shows a lot, or random things. I'd say that a lot, or I definitely do. Stuttering. I know I would do that when I was stressed. Like, I'd say random words, or I think stimming actually started coming out. I think I noticed it once I was at work. I kind of would shake my hands like that, or I'd go to the bathroom or whatever and start hitting myself because I got something wrong. But I very much learned, going to the bathroom, I learned to kind of try and do that in private, because it wouldn't be good for people to see that. Now, I think, as far as I'm aware, I think from my experience, I do feel like I fit criteria for both BPD and autism, but the symptoms of BPD, I think they're just less at the moment. I think having a massive cull of people, some people just took themselves away, they moved or whatever, or sometimes just drift apart. But, really culling out toxic people in my life and really focusing on the healthy relationships. I'm in a healthy romantic relationship for the first time. And I think that's done wonders on my development and recognizing things in myself. Because fortunately my partner gives me that space to kind of shut myself in a dark room for 10 minutes if things get too much, or put my headphones on when we walk into town together. Things that I think if I tried doing that with other people, they'd consider it rude or antisocial or whatever, or just kind of not appropriate. And I think that's what a lot of it was. I think I got so good at masking because I think so. I feel like I'm a autistic people pleaser with BPD and like fear of abandonment and stuff, and so I'd put my sensory stuff on the line because I'm like, okay, I don't want to upset this person by saying, oh, can we not go to this place or whatever, because I'm scared that they will no longer want to be friends or they'll leave me, etc. So I kind of push through to make everyone else comfortable, because I think the few times I had tried being like, oh, this is too much or whatever, I'd be immediately shut down or told that I should just put up with it. So I learned to be like, okay, if there's 5 people there and I'm the only one that's got a problem, I've just got to suck it up. even though that's a detriment to my health. I think that's very much the mindset I had. And I think deep down I knew that they just didn't care. Like some people, like they just wanted that, like I was very much there as like a consolation prize sort of thing. Like I had some friends where they'd invite me out and then they'd just like leave me on my own for the whole night because they've seen better people. But because sometimes they'd stay at mine, they'd be like, oh, well, where are you going? And I'm like, well, you haven't spoken to me for most of the evening. So, but yeah, I think, so I'm starting private therapy soon, and I think that will hopefully help, and I should hear within a couple of weeks to start the assessment process for autism. So I'm kind of at that point where I'm questioning everything because I'm about to find out stuff. So I think having that clarification will help. Just because I've been speaking about BPD and stuff for so long as well, I think like imposter syndrome, I guess. I'm like, oh, well then people think I'm being fake or whatever. Which is another video I'm going to do about kind of like trauma and how people will perceive you as fake when you're not. Yeah, so I don't know if I've cleared anything. I think I just wanted to talk about my experience because like I know it's actually common, but I haven't seen many people talk, especially in videos, about it anyway. And hopefully that will encourage other people to kind of seek help in kind of like being like, okay, I have this diagnosis, but actually apparently that seems to fit, or the other, or both. Because I think psychology is going further in the sense of like, plus I think it's like you get people in YouTube comments, TikTok comments, Twitter comments where they'll be like, oh, that's not my experience, so that doesn't happen. And I'm like, okay, well, you're one of literally billions of people. And I think that's one thing I struggle with in terms of like therapy and psychologists and stuff, is that they do have different opinions. And as somebody that doesn't have a sense of self and, again, people pleasing, I'm like, okay, they don't like this, so I'll stop doing this behaviour because apparently that's wrong. But then other people will be like, no, that's fine, or whatever. And so it's hard that I find that hard, even harder to be like, okay, who am I? What's going on with me? Because different clinicians and stuff have different opinions. Because, you know, if you go to like 50 of them, they're all bound to have a different opinion and you're bound to find one that does fit. But you're not really sure. Yeah. I'm just a mess in there. It's fine. But yeah, I hope this video has been informative a little bit. I'm not sure. I've just been rambling. But yeah, so let me know if there's any other videos you guys would like to see, and I'll see you guys soon.